Hello, aviation operations students. This is section 2 of week 7, and we are going to be discussing the structures of business, the legal structures of business, which you should also have probably talked about in your other class. So let's get started. So again, mini lecture 2 for week 7, business legal structures. So we're looking at the primary types. There are other types, but the primary types are sole proprietorship, partnership, and corporation. So a sole proprietorship, and those of you who are the only ones, this is the primary form that you'll take, is a business owned and operated by one person. The advantages are ease of formation and dissolution, sole ownership of profits taxed at your individual income rate. Control and decision-making are vested in one owner, and flexibility, relative freedom from regulations, and special taxation. But there are downsides. Unlimited liability for business debts, though they may be reduced by proper insurance, but that is also an expense. Unstable business life dependent on the health and welfare of the owner. Potential lack of continuity. Less available capital in most cases, relative difficulty in obtaining long-term financing. And one of the reasons is your personal finances and your business finances are not fully separate in this business model, and so that can impact your ability to get long-term financing for your business. Relatively limited viewpoint and size and lack of sounding boards. However, there may be members, people who've retired from this type of business, or members of the community that you know who might serve as mentors or sounding boards for you. Difficulty in building equity in the company for sale or retirement purposes, because it is not a completely separate business from the person who has it, it's hard to separate it and sell the business. Partnership. So those of you that are in groups of 2 or 3 will be partners. Partnership is an association of 2 or more people for business purposes. And one of the things is you need to have an agreement in writing that covers preferably all of these areas. The name of the business, the purpose, and the domicile. So if you had 3 partners and all of you lived in different states, you would have to choose one as the state in which you are registered. The duration of the agreement, the nature of the partners. Is everyone an equal partner? Are there active and silent partners? Are you going to do some kind of a limited liability partnership? The contributions by each at inception and subsequently. Now, if one of you has money, one of you has the necessary skills, and someone else has an airplane, you may have to figure out exactly how you're going to apportion it, because that may not be exactly easy to figure out who has what amount. Business expenses, how are you going to manage those business expenses? The authority of each partner to make decisions. Someone has to be the boss. There has to be a chief executive officer, and you have to decide how you're going to pick that person. Or are you going to rotate it over a series of years? The debts are separate. All 3 of the people owe money in the percentage that they're into the business. You also need to look at record keeping, division of losses and profits, draws or salaries. So a salary is easy to understand, but instead of getting a salary, you could get a draw, and that is you take money out of the business. The rights of a continuing partner. So if a partner leaves and the others are continuing, what rights does that person have? The death of a partner. Who's going to manage the employees and how? The release of debt. So if something's paid off, how do you do that? How do you decide which thing is paid off and gets released? Transfer of partnership interest, arbitration and settlement of disputes, additions, alterations, or modifications of the agreement, required and prohibited acts. And so you need to think about what acts are prohibited. Are you going to be able to do spins? Are you going to allow alcohol on the property? Because if there is an incident, that could be a major issue for your business. Absence and disability. How long is someone gone before you have to reevaluate if they are an active partner or not? So once you've sorted all these things out, it is actually easy to organize a partnership. You have automatic availability of sounding board for business choices. You have people, you can throw out an idea and say, hey, how about if we think about doing this? And they can give you good feedback as to why or why not it's a good idea. Minimum capital required because multiple people are pooling their resources together. And more capital available than for a sole proprietorship. Broader management base and provision for continuity. So if something happens to one person, the whole business doesn't go down. So in the corner here, these people are trying to figure out in their partnership what kind of agreement they want to have. And FinancePal.com has some good information on making that choice. Again, as with everything, there's a downside. In any partnership, including marriage, sometimes it doesn't go well and there is conflict and potentially a dissolution. There's less flexibility. So while you have partners to consult with, you also need to consult with your partners before taking action. Unlimited liability unless you set up a limited liability partnership. Potential size limitations. Capital restrictions may be inappropriately bound by the actions of just one empowered partner. So for example, if one partner gets into financial difficulty, that is going to impact the ability of the entire business to be able to get resources, and difficulty of transferring partnership interest if that has not been completely resolved in the start. And the third primary type is incorporation. So there's limits on stockholders' liability to the amount they invested. Ownership is readily transferable. They have a separate legal existence. Even with the demise of current owners, it can be inherited or sold. Relative ease of obtaining capital compared with other organizational forms, because an incorporation is separate from the individuals. And there are tax advantages, including owner's fringe benefits and other considerations. So you can take compensation as dividends instead of salaries. That reduces your Social Security tax liability. You can also do things like having your phone and your car and other things provided by the business. Again, those are not, cannot be taxed by Social Security, but that also would limit the amount of Social Security you would have available to you when you retire. So you have to take that into consideration. It permits a larger size and also lends itself easily to expansion. Only incorporated companies can go public. You can delegate the authority to employees and officers. Potentially broader skill base as you have a larger firm. And so if you need a new skill set, you can go out and either contract with someone or hire them into your company. Again, there are downsides. Because this is more independent of the individuals, there's closer governmental financial regulation, relative cost and complexity to set up. And if you don't set something up, that may cause issues in the future. The activities are limited by the charter. So as an incorporation, you're chartering to do something. The business could be open to manipulation of minority stockholders, so they could band together and make a decision that doesn't go along with what you would like for your business. There's double taxation on corporate net income and on individual salaries and dividends, though that is also offset by some of the other benefits that you can have. There is a board of directors and corporate officers who have responsibility. There are special types, and again, there's more than this, but these are some of the primary special types of businesses. An S corporation combines capital raising options and limited liability of a corporation with the tax benefits of a partnership, no double taxation, and sometimes this is even done in a sole proprietorship. A limited liability corporation, recommended for companies that are smaller and not sole proprietors. There are the advantages of a partnership, but with limited liability. And a benefit corporation. So you're pursuing a stated non-financial goal, often social or environmental, still for profit, same tax status as an S Corp. An example of this, to be a true nonprofit, it doesn't mean that you don't make a profit. It means all that money goes back into the business again. But with a benefit corporation, you actually can make a profit, but the purpose of it is not primarily to make money. So if your company has a green branch or a social activity branch, you might want to separate that off into a benefit corp, and that can also feed into your social corporate responsibility, which is something you should probably look up before the test if you don't know it. Mergers and acquisitions. There's vertical ones. One company takes over another. Horizontal, two companies that are at the same level may merge. And that might be great because they can cut down some of the duplication of services and they can save money and still provide their businesses. Or if they have complementary services, that can be great. And a conglomerate, you look at Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, it is so many different kind of businesses. You can't even look at it as a merger or acquisition. There can be advantages. There can be disadvantages. It can be a hostile takeover. So one of the businesses did not want to be acquired, but that can happen anyway. Some positive things can be strategic alliances and joint ventures. A joint venture is when two businesses go together. It may be to fulfill a contract or to do something together. An example might be that an airport wants to have a flight school. And so they put out saying, we want a flight school to come here, but they want it to be a certain size. Two smaller flight schools might be able to join up together. They can stay separate businesses. They might specialize in different areas. They set all that up, but they can work together and stay as two separate businesses. Or strategic alliances. We talked about the idea of referring from, has someone referring you to others, you referring to them. You can actually make that into a formal arrangement. Corporate philosophy. So we've thought about this. We've talked about it in corporate social responsibility, where you're doing something that's good, but you're also using it for marketing. Nordstrom's return policy. There's no reason, you just return whatever you want to return. Frito-Lay's 99.5% reliability of daily calls to all stores. Now, mind you, in Texas with the weather, that may not have happened, but they really go for that every single day, 99.5% reliability of providing things to the stores. If that does not happen, then that day is seen as a failure. McDonald's stress on hygiene, clean bathrooms, clean kitchens. So that is great, but also when they get hit with something like a bad batch of beef or bad lettuce, that has a double impact on them because hygiene is such a stress for them. And the last one on this list, airlines conferences on any delays greater than 1 minute. This is something that came out of the last economic downturn. And so when an aircraft takes off 1 minute later or longer, it goes on a list and a cause has to be assigned to it. So it might be that 30 airplanes were late at one airport because of weather. That you can't do anything about. But another thing they look at is, are there ways we can fix it? So it's not always a blame game. It's how can we make this better? So for example, 4 airplanes were late. When I went to one of the regional airlines, I was able to attend their daily conference. And 4 airplanes were late because the caterer had the wrong size cups, so they wouldn't fit in the holders, and they had to go back and get the right size cups. So instead of saying, well, that's horrible, they thought they assigned someone to work with the caterer to help make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. We're fueling airplanes. We're parking them so that we're blocking access to being able to get fueled. Maybe that's something we can change. I will say that often if there is any way that they can blame it on someone outside the corporation, they will. If they can blame it on a caterer or a fuel company. But looking at it, why is the fuel company, why do we keep saying delays at this airport? Do we need to have more than one because they can't really service us all the time? How do we solve these problems? And so looking at keeping the airline on time by problem solving. Delta Airline has a Delta family, everybody's family. Disney customers are guests and their employees are characters. Maytag has reliability, Ford has quality. Southwest Airlines, and next week I'll be asking you to go back and look at their mission because it applies to the employees as well as to the customers. So that's something to think about when you go back. And you need to think about your culture for your organization. How do you want to be viewed? What do you want people to say about you? And how do you make sure your practices and your marketing help you do that? We also look at management styles. There are some management styles that come naturally to people or other that people have to learn. Decentralization can be a positive or a negative. Authority given at lower levels, delegation. So that can be great in helping to develop people as long as there is someone at the top who can act when it needs to be done. If you have an owner, however, who sets up the business and walks away and is gone out of contact for months at a time, that is not healthy for a business. Someone has to be responsible. Manage it by walking around. This was my husband's favorite way to manage. You stop by and you talk to people. You see if they have everything they need. Are they ready to meet the deadlines? Is everything going okay? Do they need some help with something? How's their family doing? When he went to working remotely 10 years ago, this was a real challenge because this was his primary management style. He's been able to duplicate that with IM. So he has a screen over to his right, and that has the IMs with all his engineers. And so he can check in with them regularly. He can see when he last checked in with them. He can contact them to make sure they have the resources they need. Do they need someone else to help them? Are they doing okay on meeting that deadline? So management by walking around can be done without physically walking around. Management by results. This is it. This is what we have to produce. I am going to manage to make sure that that happens. I'm going to make sure the resources are in place, the people are in place, that there are no impediments, and that things get done. Effective work groups. Working as a team. Hiring and training people and making sure that they have the skills necessarily to do the good job. And also having support staff, having a front desk person, having an administrator, having a human relations office to help with those, supporting everyone else in the company. So there are a number of ways to organize any kind of business by function. For example, if you had an FBO, you might have your mechanics in one section, your flight school in another section, your charter in another section. You might have a chain of command. You might have the boss, and then they go down from there. Or it could be by geography, especially whether you serve different areas or whether you're located in different areas, dividing up the organizational structure by geography. Your employee handbook, which we'll talk about more when we get to human relations, should include the organizational structure so employees know the expectations and who to go to. And that would include who to go to, for example, if it's work related, or who to go to if they need help with a human relations issue. Do they talk to someone locally? Do they talk to someone back at the headquarters? So what is the role of small businesses in the United States? One of them is to provide jobs. 99.7% of employer firms, that's somebody who hires somebody, is a small business. They're often the ones to introduce new products and provide products without even trying to dominate the field. They have their area and they work within it. They meet the needs of larger organizations. Because of their small size, they're innovative, flexible, and could do a lot with limited resources. They can also pivot quickly if something changes. Where do they fail? If they're providing something for which there's not demand, if they don't plan, if they fail to pivot when the time comes, and if they don't have something to challenge the competition. They're not the only one in their niche, and they don't find any way to differentiate themselves, which is why I've asked you to think about that in your business model. So that is the end of business structures and management styles. Next up, management 3, management information systems. Thank you very much. And again, number 3 on management information systems, it'll be a relatively short video, and that will finish our lecture videos for the week. There will also be a career video posted by Thursday.